from his birth until I euthanized him at 18 months of age, he never had anything bad happen to him.
Welcome to Just a Dog podcast. I am your host, Nadine. Today I'm joined by Trish McMillan. Trish has spent over 30 years working with dogs in shelters, rescues and welfare organisations. Her work focuses on dogs whose behaviour is difficult, complex or unsafe, and on supporting the people responsible for making decisions about their care. She works directly with shelter teams and guardians to assess behaviour, quality of life and risk. And this includes helping decide when dogs can be safely supported and when they can be rehomed, and also when euthanasia is the most humane option. These decisions are based on evidence, observation and long-term outcomes, not optimism or ideology. Trish's perspective comes from decades of hands-on experience with thousands of dogs alongside families, volunteers and professionals. She has seen what happens when hard decisions are avoided, delayed or passed on to the public, and her work is rooted in reducing harm to both dogs and humans. This conversation explores behaviour, responsibility and what it means to act in a dog's best interest when the choices are not simple or comfortable. Enjoy. Well, I'm very happy to have you here. I listened to a bunch of podcasts with you in, and they all kind of start from the same platform where it's like, okay, let's start at the beginning. But your beginning tends to start from university. And I was wondering if we could go back even further to get some kind of understanding of what the landscape looked like for dogs specifically when you were a child, when you were growing up, and why you're interested in dogs.
I'm actually a horse girl. And I started off, like everybody says, I was the kid who fed. I figured if I fed all the animals in the house, they would like me best. And my mom was a big, big animal lover. My dad was not, but he followed along and pretended not to care. But I would hear him talking to my guinea pigs in the morning. I'm like, oh, you're just doing this blustery. So my dad was a minister and my mom was a social worker. So I come by the bleeding heart part of my personality, honestly. And I grew up in Canada, moving very often. My theory is my dad had 7 years worth of sermons, so I never lived anywhere more than 7 years, and it was often less. It was just hard on an introverted, shy kid. So I bonded with the animals, and I would make friends with whoever had horses and go out and play with their horses. And of course, we always had a dog, and I just took over training the dog because nobody else did, and take out books from the library and just figure things out with leftovers from dinner. Can I teach him a stupid dog trick? So I was always like the horse girl with a carrot in my back pocket. I was very relieved when cookie training became okay. I didn't have to hide it anymore with horses or with dogs. When I was 15, I was given an Appaloosa horse by a couple that was getting divorced. The man was like moving, needed to do something with this 2-year-old horse with no training. He said, I'm going to give you a really good deal on this horse, but at some point, if you are in a position to help a 15-year-old with something they really, really want. Like, I know what it's like. I wanted a motorcycle. An older guy gave me a motorcycle when I was younger, so I know what it's like. And, this was before the Pay It Forward movie. He's like, if you are ever in a position to help a teenager with something they really, really want, please do that. So I have not done anything as grand as that yet, but I am keeping an eye out for that teenager. If you are that teenager and you're in Asheville, come contact me. So I got this horse who didn't know anything. I didn't have a saddle. Had to train him bareback until I could afford a saddle, and, read all the books, took a lesson when I could, and trained him up, sold him to somebody at the stable I was at, and got a fancier horse a few years later. And I did a lot of fancier things with him. He was able to jump and do things that this Appaloosa, who was built like a car made with square tires, was not able to do. And that horse paid my first year's tuition at university. And I was horseless for a while after that. And I basically got too broke to have horses because I was a starving artist. And very romantic to like live in a tent and live in a cabin with no electricity and have these terrible waitressing jobs. I'm terrible as a server. I just cannot make myself care about other people's food. And I decided my last year of art school, I called the shelter and said, okay, what do I have to do to get a dog? I've got a job on a horse farm all summer. I just want to go with the dog. And they're like, oh, you're a student? We don't adopt to students. I'm like, well, I'm almost done. I've got roommates. And like, are you away from home more than 4 hours a day? Sometimes, but my roommate, they're like, we don't adopt to people who are students. We don't adopt to people who are gone for more. I'm like, who do you adopt to? The idle rich and the homeless? Like, who can meet these criteria? So that left such a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't take a dog to me to the horse farm for the summer, and I did not take a dog with me to the West Coast to starve as an artist. And a few years later, when I was going to get a dog, I went out and bought one from a breeder. I'm like, well, I'm not good enough for a shelter dog. They left a bad taste in my mouth. And I I wanted a Dalmatian because I had used to babysit for somebody with one, and I loved that dog, and they love horses. And I thought, this is a dog who can run as far as a horse can. When I can afford a horse, she will run beside me. And I had no idea how to select a breeder. And I lucked into an amazing breeder who had really great temperaments in her dogs. So Indy was just the best Dalmatian ever. I spent 13 years apologizing for her, saying, they're not all like this. Don't assume they're all like this. Because she was great. We did agility, we did obedience. She had the temperament to be a therapy dog, like just an awesome, awesome dog. And, she died in my arms at 13 years of age. And that could have been a shelter dog's life if somebody had taken a chance on that student. But we're irresponsible. We're just going to give our dogs away.
Well, that definitely fueled a fire inside of you.
Yeah. Well, and then in the 90s, the 101 Dalmatians movie came out a couple of years after I got this dog, and suddenly the shelters were full of Dalmatians. So that sort of sucked me into shelter world. I started with Dalmatian Rescue, and then my friend Kim got me fostering, and before you knew it, I was hooked. That was 1996, so this is the 30-year anniversary of the first time I stepped into a shelter, and have not really stepped out. It has been a driving force in my life to help shelter dogs. They've really taught me more than anyone.
I was curious when you were telling me about training horses, whether or not there was much of an overlap between training horses and then.
Yeah, I think the reason the fearful dogs sort of have my heart and I'm pretty good with them is because horses will teach you a lot about working with a flight animal. Is their thing, if they're not sure what to do, is they're just going to book it. They're going to get out of there. And you learn to be very cautious with your body language. You're not just going to flail your arms around a horse. Well, you would think people would not flail around shy dogs, but they do. Like if you're not a horse person. And once I started clicker training my horses, it really upped my clicker training game because boy, oh boy, you cannot be sloppy with a horse. Like we can throw food at dogs. We can grab it from our bait bag and stuff it right in their face. We can click and treat at the same time. We can click and move our hand at the same time. Like dogs are very forgiving. If it's your first species, you're going to clicker train. Dogs are perfect. So they're just, they want to figure it out. Whereas with a horse, like imagine an animal that they have to eat many, many, many hours a day. Like they are almost always eating. Hungry as a horse is really a thing. So I just use hay pellets for my clicker treats. You don't want a horse to get too excited. And they are always hungry. And you can feed them one and feed them another. They got lots of room in that mouth. You don't have to wait for them to swallow in between. But imagine a 1,000-pound Labrador who really, really, really wants what's in your bait bag. And if you're at all sloppy and they figure out how to get their face in that bait bag, they really can hurt you. So you have to do a lot of teaching around food manners to start before you even go in with a horse, and regulating the arousal. And if you start clicking and treating and moving your hand at the same time, they'll start wrapping around you and start moving closer to that hand. And you really have to click, reach for the food, extend it in front of you, keep the horse's head straight in front of them. So anybody who's looking to up their clicker game, like chickens are great to clicker train because you have to be fast. And if you are not right there and you accidentally click a scratch, they're going to be scratching for everything. But with, so if you want to speed up, work with smaller animals. If you want to slow down, work with larger animals. So I would encourage anybody with an interest in training to work with different species, because I learn something from every species I work with on the farm.
There's an overlap, yeah. I've observed some people can be trainers, but they see what they've been taught to see as opposed to really seeing.
They talk about, the 10,000 hour eyes, like just having eyes on animals is so important. I think it's really advantageous to spend a lot of time watching animals and being with animals and learning their language. I do think a lot of things can be taught, but I think those thousands of hours of observation, like I worked in dog daycares for 2.5 years, and that was so helpful to learn about dog play and dog interactions. And it has really become a big part of what I do with shelter people now, is really emphasize how important it is to let the dogs help one another. It was having those thousands of hours of watching dogs interact where it kind of gives you that sixth sense of like, oh, okay, I better go hop in on this right now because things are starting to tip. The other thing is we all have video cameras in our pockets now. So it was really helpful when I got my first uh, camera capable of slow motion to look at interactions in slow motion. You can see so many little micro signals, and that can be a really great way to tune your eye if you're new to watching dogs, just especially if two dogs are really interacting fast. I often show a video of one of my Dobermans playing with another dog, and if you see it in regular motion, it looks like they're murdering the dog. But if you look at
Yeah.
it in slow motion, you can see just how eloquent they are with their mouths, and she is never touching the dog. But all you see is teeth, and you hear growling. As species who used to be chased by things that look like this in the forest, we are naturally very wary of teeth and growling. But watching it in slow motion, you can be like, okay, it looks terrible, but you're not actually touching each other and you're both having fun.
I recently had a conversation with a dog trainer who told me that it's not necessarily in the dog's best interest for them to socialize with their own kind because yeah, I thought that was really interesting because they said the primary attachment should be with humans. They should consider humans to be their own kind rather than acting like feral dogs from learned behaviors from other dogs.
The Stockholm syndrome.
I get what you're saying. If you want ultimate compliance, yeah, totally. But is that really in the dog's best interest?
If you look at the research on what solitary confinement does to humans, like I think it's the United Nations that has just declared more than 15 days of solitary confinement is now considered torture. So to deprive a dog of interacting with other dogs for life, like certainly there are dogs who are aggressive towards their own kind. My breeds are Dobermans and Pit Bulls. Those are the only two breeds I've ever repeated. And both of them tend towards same-sex dog aggression. So it's not like every dog needs a buddy and needs to be with them all the time. They're all individuals, but a good portion of them really, really enjoy playing. And I do a little bit of board and train here and there, and I have had clients accuse me of drugging their dogs because they get to play with my dogs all day when they are not being trained. Like they get nap time, they get training time, but there's a lot of dog play. And especially if you've got that mouthy adolescent who is chomping on your arms and chomping on the leash and grabbing at your pant legs, let them chomp on somebody who enjoys being chomped on, who is protected by a coat of fur.
Yes.
And like I love that a lot of us in the behavior world are starting to move towards let's meet the dog's needs first and then see what that does to the behavior problems. So many of the behavior problems I see are just a result of unmet needs. Like it is hard. You live in an apartment, you have an athletic dog, like just meeting her exercise needs, meeting her physical needs is hard. I lived in a New York City apartment, a studio apartment with 3 dogs, and to get them out and give them a chance to exercise and give them fresh air and sunshine and the company of their own kind and the company of humans it's so valuable, and my dogs are each other's best therapists. I have 2 dogs who are extremely fearful. One I would describe as feral when I got her, and she's a little better than feral now, but still very, very, very fearful of so many things, and it's the other dogs who have helped her. Like, see, because we lie to dogs all the time. We're like, "Come on in, and we're gonna clip your nails, and come into the bathroom, we're gonna give you a bath. Come in from outside,
Yes.
in your crate, and I'm going to work." So,
Yes.
we not that we should be doing this, but a lot of us do, and, we have to go to work. So but other dogs don't lie to one another. So that little guy who was on my lap earlier is terrified of all humans other than me. So I try to take him somewhere where there are humans every day, and I take a friendly dog with us. I have 2 dogs who are therapy dog material, who just love every single, like, if the new person walks in, they're like, "I need to know everything about you right now." And I watch him watching them become like, "Oh, can we pet your dog?" So I can pet the big one, but not the little one. And the bigger dog will go up to the person, and I'll see the little guy just watching like, "You're letting a stranger put their hands on you?" And he's not there yet, but he's also not growling or retreating or snapping or like, he understands I will keep him safe. It's all at his speed. But, I know that if I go without the other dog, I have gone without the other dog, and his tail is tucked, and he's glancing around, and he's hyper vigilant. But if he's with his big buddies, I can walk him through the hardware store, and his little tail's up, and he trots along, and he knows I will keep him safe. I have a buffer dog, so if people wanna put their hands on, it's hard though, because he's little and cute, and everybody wants to put their hands on him.
In all of your experience, what is it, 30 plus years
Well,
now?
30 years since I walked into a shelter, but, I got my first horse at 15, and I had my first
Right.
dog at 11, so that's close to 50 years ago. Not that I was a
Goodness.
professional trainer 50 years ago, I was 11, but I have had my hands on animals daily since then.
Yeah. It's a it's a tricky question actually, because how do you distill that amount of time into one experience? But if you think back on your career to perhaps one dog or one case that really shaped your view of dogs in terms of what they taught you, something that maybe for you was revolutionary, what comes to mind or who comes to mind?
Well, the whole going from, like, an interest in behavior to I must know everything about behavior. I can pinpoint one dog in particular, many of us can as trainers. Like, there's that one dog who made you get really, really serious, and for me, that was Chinook, and I've talked about him on a lot of podcasts, and I was really lucky to have him when I was still an apprentice trainer, as 'cause Dunning-Kruger is real, that Dunning-Kruger curve where
Oh, the
you
learning.
yeah, you think you know the most when you actually know the least. So the first 2 years when I was a baby apprentice dog trainer, I knew everything. Like, I know a little less every year since then, but he was really the curve into the valley of despair, because he was a puppy that I raised from birth with his litter, who was unbelievably aggressive. He's the most aggressive dog I have ever lived with, and I can tell you for sure that from his birth until I euthanized him at 18 months of age, he never had anything bad happen to him. He did not have, maybe his dinner was late, but a lot of us make excuses with shelter dogs. We're like, "Oh, well, he's scared of men. He must have been hit by men. He's guarding his food, so somebody must have starved him." Like,
Mhm.
I am here to tell you that there are dogs who are just miswired. And I think I had him from 1997 to 1999. And I think my entire obsession with dogs since 1999 has been trying to figure out what went wrong with Chinook, what I could have possibly done, where this unbelievable aggression came from, because I have scars up and down me from that dog. He heard voices. It was like, he would flip, and he would be in bite mode until you got him into a hold where he couldn't bite you, and you just held him till the voices left. And th then he would, then he would be all right for a little while. And it was worse at night. It was with what I know, and feel free to look up my name and listen to podcasts. I've done whole podcasts about him, but his aggression was so explosive and so severe. And with what I know now, I think it was really low threshold resource guarding, but sometimes the resource was just in his head. And sometimes something that wasn't a resource yesterday is now a resource today. Like, one time, one of the worst attacks on my boyfriend was over he just walked out onto the back porch, and Chinook went after him, and I heard the biting and the snarling, and, Bob got him into the grip and just held him until the attack was over, and there was nothing on the porch. Like, it was nighttime, and that was always a trickier time, but all I can think of was the night before he had gotten into some garbage on the porch.
Right.
And it was still a hot zone 24 hours later, and just Bob walking out onto it was enough to trigger an attack. So the only thing I would change, like, Prozac helped him a little bit for a while, and then it stopped helping, and it didn't take away the attacks, but it brought him down by a good percentage. And with what I know now, the only thing I would do different if a Chinook walked into my life again is I would euthanize earlier. Like, when I see that suite of behaviors, that dog knew only kindness and love. We did very gentle training. I did not slap a shock collar on him. I did not beat him with a 2x4. I did not,
Yeah.
like, there was no abuse. There was no starvation. But his mother and father were pretty much feral. They lived in a basement. They were brother and sister. They were starved and full of parasites during the first month of her pregnancy, and those puppies didn't get the nutrition. They doubled down on these feral genetics with a brother-sister breeding, and she spent her second month of the pregnancy in a very stressful they euthanized the male as soon as he came in because he was defecating and climbing the walls when people went by. But they held on to the female because she was able to take food from us, and they were trying to make a case. They were trying to make a cruelty case to punish the people who had done this to these dogs. And then she started getting wider and wider. I'm like, oh, I'm a baby trainer. It'd be so great to raise these puppies. They're going to be super puppies. I'm going to do early neurological stimulation. I'm going to teach them all of this stuff. Not one of them was normal. One of them.
Yeah. So biologically,
Yeah, there's a lot more to how they're raised. Like, that's something that really gets my back up is when people say, "Oh, I know how you raised them." I'm like, okay, so am I an evil person because a puppy I raised from birth had to be euthanized at 18 months of age? And um, and the flip side of that is my pit bull Theodore, who was from a fighting case. He was raised on a chain for the first 8 months. He was starved. He was not cared for properly. He was um, raised to be dog aggressive. He was kept just far enough away from these other dogs to really frustrate him. And he was a dud. He was like the cattle dog who's scared of cows. He just had no fight in him. And people would see me out with him, and he's well behaved, and he's saying hi to everybody, and he's great with dogs and cats. And I got pictures of him on the dog bed with chickens. And they're like, well, clearly it's because this nice lady raised him. And, oh, well, of course, all pit bulls, they get a bad rap. It's all how you raise them. I'm like, his owner's in prison. Like, the guy who abused him and starved him and killed a lot of his family in dogfights is in prison. Like, you're going to give that guy credit for how great this dog is? Because I knew he was great when I met him. He was 14 months old. He was a helper dog at the shelter. And, there's so much more to animal behavior than how they're raised. They're not blank slates that you can just write anything on. So, yeah, those two dogs have really been very influential on my views on animal behavior, but Chinook was the one who took it to an obsession.
that's a really difficult choice to make because we want to get things right. We want to nurture them. We want to love them.
Well, and I've had a lot of successes before that, taking
Yeah.
shelter dogs home, and you potty train them and do a bit of training and move them along. Like, I was feeling like top of the world, and I'm glad the world humbled me. So
Yeah.
I was getting insufferable, and I think it is good for us as trainers to be humbled once in a while. I don't wish a lesson like that upon anybody, but I'm really glad it happened to me because I do a lot of consulting with shelters on making euthanasia decisions, and I do a lot of talking to owners who are facing this and just having been through it myself. Like there were years I couldn't even talk about Chinook. It was just such an impossibly hard thing to go through as a pet owner, let alone as a trainer.
So that experience informed many of your consequent experiences, from my understanding, with behavioral euthanasia cases. And I guess also working in rescue, there are cases that are not linked to behavior, that they're just capacity issues. How do you, from what I've learned about you, is that you've got a pretty pragmatic approach. But now that I've kind of met you, even though it's online, I understand the pragmatism, but also I can tell that you're very sensitive as well. You're very soft. So how do you strike a balance with those things? I know you've had a lot of, you've received a lot of backlash and a lot of controversy for your perspective, but you've lived it. It's not a theory, it's based in actual lived experience. So how do you kind of reconcile with everything that kind of happens, the feelings around it, the way the world responds, and then also what's best for the dogs in your care?
I used to be that person. When I started in sheltering, I was going to save them all. There was a lid for every pot, there was a home for every dog, there was training that would fix every problem, that whole Dunning-Kruger spike where you know everything. And so I get it, the people who come after me because I will help a shelter make euthanasia protocols and, having written policy around what you will and won't adopt out is really important so that everything's not on a case by case basis. It's not like, well, we have to try everything with every dog. Well, no, you get a Chinook. Like, please don't. Please, I tried for 18 months. I got the scars to show for it. So I try to have empathy for the people who are not at that point in their journey, because if you stay in this business long enough, you will meet your Chinook. You will have that experience. And the thing that really changed my mind and took me from no kill Trish to like, okay, we can't fix everything was I I inflicted a lot of Chinooks on other people. I was at a stage where, my friends were getting their first apartments, my friends were getting into their first serious relationships, and just had room in their lives for a dog. And I inflicted some really scary dogs on personal friends of mine. And I think a lot of us in rescue just the dog leaves, we have our cake, we have our party, bye-bye, and we don't know what happens, cross our fingers. Hopefully he doesn't ever meet a cat. Hopefully they listen to him when we say don't go to the dog park. Hopefully they listen to us when we say don't have visitors over, keep away from kids. But having long-term follow-up and seeing what I put personal friends of mine through with dangerous dogs where they had to do the euthanasia. I have held the veins for a lot of, like, I was at the ASPCA shelter for 3.5 years, and I've held veins for a lot of behavioral euthanasias because sometimes I was the only one who could get the dog out of the kennel. And it sucks, you've been working with this dog, they call you mommy, they hop up and down, you pop the leash on, you take them for a walk, you take them to the vet. And anytime I held off a vein for a euthanasia, I thought about not just Chinook, but I thought about these friends that I had. I've only written about one of them in The Perils of Placing Marginal Dogs. It's on Shelter Behavior Hub. But the thing I don't say in that article was those were not the only people I did that to. And I outsourced our shelter's euthanasia to personal friends of mine. And they're civilians. They do not, like, I would think about them and think, at least I'm the shelter person. I got to be tough. And at least there's not a family who's going to have to go through this, because it is so impossible to make that decision for an animal that, especially one that you have worked with for years and you have really done everything for, and some of them just are not fixable. Like, would the best psychiatrist in the world be able to make Jeffrey Dahmer safe to babysit your teenage sons while you go away for the weekend? Like, how much work would you need to feel okay with that? Um, there are minds that are just too broken, and it's the hardest part of the job, but it is our responsibility. If we're going to do rescue, if we're going to do sheltering, we cannot be outsourcing that to civilians. Because when I think about How many people heard the story of Rosie over the 4 years my friend had her, where she killed 3 of the neighbors' cats, 2 of them in full view of the neighbors. She mauled another neighbor's little dog, pulled him under the fence and pulled the fence off the hinges. She got off her leash and grabbed another dog on the street, and my friend got all of his fingers dislocated breaking up that dog fight. And she was starting to stalk children in the same way she was stalking other animals at the point where they decided to euthanize her. Like, that is an unconscionable thing to do, and those folks worked in the film business in Vancouver. When I think about the number of people who must have heard the Rosie stories over the 4 years that, they're coming in with their hand bandaged up and, oh, she killed another neighbor's cat. And I will tell you for sure those friends never got another shelter dog. I am still friends with them. They are on their second purebred dog from a breeder, and I have nothing wrong with purebred dogs from breeders. I've done that too. But if I'd given them a Theodore, if I'd given them a dog like some of my amazing shelter dogs, I could have got them hooked. And, they've raised their daughter with, this is what we do. We go to a purebred breeder and we get a purebred dog. And I don't know if they've told their daughter the Rosie stories, but I probably killed 20 shelter dogs by adopting out one dangerous one because of the people she deterred from ever going through a rescue or a shelter. So that's something we really have to think about in this industry. You can cross your fingers and hope, but if you're not doing long-term follow-up, if you're not finding out which problems are not fixable, which problems are trauma, the burden of care for these dogs, you can't go on vacation, you can't have people over, you can't have kids, you can't have other pets. The other thing that has occurred to me since Chinook, and this occurred to me relatively recently, I am from a fairly big family. There are 4 kids. We are all insane animal people, and not a single one of my siblings has gone to a shelter and adopted a dog since Chinook. He has helped me explain the importance of behavioral euthanasia to people in rescue. Like, please don't put
Yeah.
people through this. Just please don't outsource this is our dirty work. This is the hardest part of the job. And we need to find ways to cope with it and put the little feelings in a box in the closet, deal with them later. But we have to be strong enough to make these calls and make these calls promptly and not torture these dogs for years sitting in kennels and spinning and freaking out is not kind.
Hmm. Yeah.
Every time you adopt out a Theodore, I can tell you lots of people adopted pit bulls because they met Theodore. They're like, I had no idea they were so friendly. I had no idea they could be so great with other dogs. I had no idea. I'm like, well, don't go to a dog fighting bust and expect they're all like this. But many of the random pit bulls in shelters are just as delightful with people. Many of them are beautifully playful with other dogs. Many of them are safe with cats. And if we send out the Theodores of the world, that's a 12-year walking advertisement for pit bulls, for shelter dogs, for your rescue. And, he had close to 50,000 friends on his Facebook page by the time he died. And I got so many stories when I first lost him about, I went to a shelter and I got a dog I chose one that looked like Theodore because I've enjoyed watching all of his shenanigans over the years.
They really can be absolute softies. It's so important. I think you made the very difficult decision to ensure that the public maintains trust in rescues. On the flip side of that, having had those experiences also would have been detrimental to some degree from a public perspective, because that attaches the kind of stigma to rescue dogs, as in, oh, rescue dogs are dangerous, rescue dogs have trauma. You know what I mean? So it's so hard to strike that balance, because you need the public to trust, firstly, and secondly, you need them to come and adopt these dogs, or at least foster these dogs, right? To give them a second chance and not tar them all with the same brush. How can shelters do that more effectively, but honestly and ethically?
I think a lot of it is around having policy. So I teach a shelter dog behavior mentorship on Shelter Behavior Hub, and my favorite thing is getting somebody who's new to rescue, just like, I want to do shelter behavior work. I'm like, all right, we're going to start at the very beginning. We're going to talk about capacity for care. We're going to talk about not talk about making SOPs. We're going to talk about meeting dogs' needs while they're with us. We're going to talk about adopting them out promptly and not hoarding them for years until we find somebody who's just like me to adopt them to. Like, we often let the perfect get in the way of the good. So there's so much more to shelter behavior work than to working with owners. Like, I have worked with dogs in shelters who you would never see in a home because they were just too dangerous. And I've worked with dogs who come from just impossibly awful situations who, once they feel safe, just turn around and go, oh, that's never happening to me again. You're a nice person. That's a nice person. And so there's so much more to, it's not just now, put this formula on your resource guarders and you will fix all of them. And just put this formula on your stranger danger dogs and they will start loving all strangers. It's about meeting their needs. It's about doing the population control. And if it's super obvious, this is never going to be an adoptable dog. They came in face bite to a kid. Let's make that decision promptly and use that time with dogs that we can turn around and just have firm criteria. Okay, I want this dog who guards his food bowl to go into a home. First, we're going to see if he does it in a home, foster him out. And before I send him out, I want a stranger to be able to walk up to the food bowl and throw a piece of chicken in and not see any growling, snarling, coming off the food to bite them. Like, so having criteria and having a timeline, like, we're not going to take 10 years to get to that point. We're going to look at the learning curve. We're going to look at how fast the dog comes around. So with little Tater, he came in with a bite to his first foster mom who had tried to pick him up when he was growling and cornered, and 3-month-old puppy just absolutely terrified. A lot of people don't respect little dogs. They're just like, so what? You're a puppy, you're growling, I'm going to pick you up anyways. And he nailed her. So I met him on bike quarantine and I gave them some protocols to try to get more people into his club. He's very much a club dog. Once you're in, you're in. If you're not in, don't even try it. And my goal with him was to take the introduction period. It took me 48 hours to be able to touch him when he came to my house. Like, if I can get that down to half a day, brother comes to visit and in half a day he can touch this dog, then we can put him up for adoption. And I have not succeeded in getting that time down very much at all. And people came to look at him and, he wasn't actively biting. Like, you'd have to be stupid to get bitten by this dog. You'd have to be approaching him cornered while he's growling at you. He gives you lots of warning, but he was like, he's perfectly safe here. People who come here, no dogs. My friend who just dropped by to pick up some meds was, she didn't try to touch him. I heard him yell at her and she completely ignored him. And he's like, all right, fine. So in this home, I can put him away if I have a workman over that cannot keep their hands off him. But in a normal home, he's not going to be super adoptable. So we did not hit our goals with him, and he doesn't eat much. 4 dogs, 5 dogs, what's the difference? So he's here for life now.
Amazing. Another foster win. How do you assess whether a dog is safe typically or not to be able to go to a family home?
It's tough when they come in as a stray. They come in with a lot of history. It's tough to figure out who they are because we're seeing them at their worst. Like, imagine people come into your house in the middle of the night and kidnap you and put you in a cell with 3 concrete walls and a chain link wall, and you've got a little hard bed and that's it. And then they're all like, oh, what's Trish like in this environment? I feel like, not myself. You're not getting enough sleep. You're not getting your social contact. Like, it's a really difficult situation. And what we used to do in the 90s and the early 2000s is we would do these one point in time behavior assessments, and we called them temperament tests back then, but there are reasons I don't use those words. And we would try to get at, what's Trish like in this cell by doing a lot of bad things to her. Give her the no good, really bad day and just like, here's a pizza, we're going to take it away from you. And here's, we're going to poke and prod you and do medical type handling. We're going to look at your teeth 6 times in a row. We're going to, restrain you and see how you do with that. And I will tell you that I probably wouldn't do terribly well, kidnapped from my home and stuck in a cell, and then we'll just do one after the other, this battery style assessment. And a lot of dogs indeed did poorly at that. And that's how we made life or death decisions back in the day. And we know more now. We have done foster studies where you send dogs out who weren't doing well in the shelter and just see what they're like in a home. So the modern way to assess behavior is we take input from multiple points of view. So if you go to the ASPCA website, they have a position statement on behavioral assessment that pretty much teaches what I've been teaching for the last 10 years, where you gather information from different points of view. So if you're lucky enough to have the owner come in, that's your best source of information. Don't just hand them a piece of paper and take it back and have them leave. Because if they say nips children, now they're gone. I don't know what that means. I don't have a lot of children I could run by this dog and see, like, does he send them to the hospital? Or is he grabbing at pant legs? Or is he puppy mouthing? Like, there's a lot of nips children that I need to have that conversation. So having a conversation with the actual person who's lived with the dog is the best way. Like, the past behavior in a home is the best predictor of future behavior in the home. And if he was mauling children in that home, like, do not pass go. Do not say, well, he's not mauling children here. No, that's a no for me. Do not send that dog out again. But if we don't have that, we might have an officer. The officer who sees Chinook's parents from the basement gave me some really good information about them. She said, they were like feral animals. They busted out. They got into the yard. I had to chase them down. It was like catching raccoons. They were very, very fearful. And that was good information for me on what their background had been like. So where they had been living, how hard they were to catch, what they were like in the truck. All of that is good information. Maybe it was a stray. A lot of us in rescue have a fee. So if I want to give up Tater and I go to the shelter, they're like, okay, pay us $50 and we will take this dog off you. And some of them have higher relinquishment fees than that. And I live in a very poor part of Appalachia. Like, $50 is a lot to many of my neighbors. So they might take them in and go, found him on the road. Here you go. So getting the information from the actual owner, I think these relinquishment fees should be flexible so that people don't, like, it's by donation. You want to give us $50, that's great. That's our suggested donation. If you don't have it, you don't have it. That prevents us from having to do here we have a 3-day hold on strays. So you're going to pay more than that to keep the dog in your shelter for 3 days anyways. So make it flexible, talk to the human. Maybe they really did find the dog on the road. I can tell you, I picked up a husky, kept coming over to my place. I picked him up multiple times, but the first time I picked him up, he was just playing with my dogs through the fence. I let him into my yard and just left him there. He's on a busy road. I'm like, at some point, his owner's going to drive by looking for him. He'll be out in the yard. He was clearly not safe with my cats, so he did not get to come in. It was springtime. He's fine outside. He's fine outside in winter. He's a husky. And so I had him I took him in the next morning, so I probably had him 12, 14 hours. And I knew a lot about this dog. I knew he was amazing with other dogs. I knew he was an idiot in the car. He was just like flailing around. I had to like tether him to the back seat. I didn't have a crate in my car. I knew he was not safe with cats. I knew he was very friendly with people. So I have all this information just from having him for a day and a half. Or just overnight, really. I get to the shelter. They're like, give us your driver's license. Give us the intersection where you found him. Bye. I'm like, well, my friend Katie works here. She's going to want to know if he goes up for adoption. So I just turned over the form. I'm like writing all of this stuff down. So even if they just caught the dog, they might have caught it yesterday. They might have caught it a week ago. They might have just driving the dog in. I would have known that he was an idiot in the car and he was friendly towards people because he did just walk up to me. Like, get that information. The shelter information is important and it can give you ideas on what to work with. But I think it is unfair to take these dogs out and do these battery assessments where we do one bad thing after another. Like, trigger stacking is a thing. You give them a no good, really bad day, you're going to see them at their worst. And I think it's important to see them at their best. So getting information from the people who feed them, the people who they're bonded to. Tater was very bonded to one of the carers in the shelter. That showed me that he has it in him to bond with a person, unlike my feral dog, who still hasn't bonded to me after a year and a half. So getting to know who they are in situations other than the shelter. So doing field trips, even fostering them overnight. It's fine. They're not going to die when they go back. And you might know that thing. You might know, wow, he's perfectly house trained. No idea. Theodore was a finger painter in the shelter. He was always covered in poop. Clean as a cat So getting all of this information and putting it together is going to give you a full picture of that animal of their actual behavior, not just your best guess.
I fostered Duna, and it's been about 4 months. And I would say only in the last month after her decompression period, she started showing her true personality, her true self in a safe environment. But you're, as a rescue,
You can't keep
needing
them
to
all for
make
3
these
months.
you have to make really quick decisions based on very fast feedback in maybe unnatural circumstances, and that could decide the life of not just the dog but also future families that they perhaps go to. It's an enormous responsibility. What do you wish more people, more regular dog owners, guardians, dog lovers knew about the rescue world in order to help?
And I would really advise anybody who wants to help to donate in ways that you can. If you don't have a life where you can foster, I think fostering's the best thing you can do. And it's so much fun. And people are like, oh, how can you say goodbye to them? I could never. I'm like, okay, so you're calling me a monster? Because I have said goodbye to hundreds of fosters. It gets easier. The first one was hard. He was not even a type of dog that I liked. It's like, oh, so it's just not going to be as good as mine. Say when I say goodbye to him, I could take in another one. So fostering, I think, is like top notch, but not all of us live in a place where we can. We do not have the family structure where we can. So, donating in ways that you can. So whether that's fundraising, whether that's filling a shelter's wish list, whether it is donating money, but do your research on the shelters and the rescues because there are ethical ones and there are less ethical ones. And what I see a lot of is like, I want to support the no kill rescue. I wish those two words would go away. Some of the worst neglect, abuse cases I have seen have been no kill rescues or sanctuaries that have gone bad. Like it's easy to get overwhelmed. I could see, a little bit of dementia. I could be that person because I got 40 animals on my farm. They're mostly chickens. I'm not a hoarder, but it's hard to say no. It's really hard to say no when somebody says, can you foster this? Can you take in these 3 chickens from a cruelty case? Can you? And I have the space and the bandwidth and the farm to say yes to a lot of these, but not all of them. So find out if the places that often need the help the most are the municipal animal controls, the places that have to make tough decisions. They actually need your help more. And if you can foster a dog from a municipal animal control and find out for them those good things, find out, wow, he was great with my kids. Wow, we were able to have the cat in the living room at night with him and he was, kissing the kitty. He's clearly lived with cats before, like finding out these things about the dogs that you can't find out in the shelter. Like even a weekend foster can be so huge, but make sure you're not supporting a hoarder. Like make sure they are actually adopting the animals out. Make sure they're not warehousing dangerous dogs indefinitely. Those types of rescues were going to put you in danger too, just as a volunteer. So do your research, talk to people who work with the rescue, see if they're actually adopting animals out, see if they do have euthanasia policies, because ironically, you are most likely to find the friendliest, nicest dogs at the shelters that do euthanize for behavior, and you're most likely to find the most dangerous dogs with the shelters that just keep them in cages forever till they die of natural causes. You're going to have statistically a higher percentage of dangerous dogs if you never euthanize the dangerous ones. That's just math.
If everyone did their part and dogs were bred properly and dogs were cared for properly and the nature nurture aspect of life with dogs was to the standard required, then ultimately rescues would end up only with the most severe cases instead of what they
Yeah, yeah.
have
I
now.
mean, if we need to see, we have a rising behavioral euthanasia um, caseload in shelters where dogs are getting harder. And we need to see that as a sign of our success, not a sign of our failure, because we are keeping a lot of these dogs in their homes. We are offering help with medical bills. We're offering help with behavior. Offering help with landlord issues so that this dog, like my little Tater, who is fine here, I know, he bit somebody in another home. If I can keep him out of the system, with a little bit of help from your shelter, then you don't have to deal with a dog who loves only his mother and is very hard to get into different homes. So yeah, when we get to 100%, when we have like the landlord thing is a big deal. Trying to find a rental with a pit bull and a Doberman. Oh my God, I was a renter most of my life. Really, really, really hard. If we had something like Fluffy's Law in Ontario, where you cannot discriminate against people for having pets in the same way you can't discriminate against people for having children in rentals, then immediately things get better for dogs. If we offer training help, if we offer help with vet bills, if we offer like, we're doing so much sheltering outside of the shelter that when we get to 100% on this, we'll only be getting the really sick and the really dangerous dogs, and our euthanasia will be 100% when we are perfect at sheltering. And that is not my hypothesis. I heard that from my friend Dr. Karsten at sheltermedicine.com. She was the one who first introduced me to that concept 10 years ago, and it's just been ringing in my head. Just, yeah, it sucks that we have to do more behavioral euthanasia, but it's because we are spaying and neutering the lovely pet dogs that used to be producing lovely pet puppies. And the people producing dogs are folks like the dog fighter I got Theodore from. They're the responsible. I'm a responsible pet owner. I have Tater's not neutered yet, but it's coming soon. And he will not reproduce. I will not be having any more taters in Appalachia. We don't need more of him. But two therapy dog types, they haven't quite been certified, but we are lining up the tests and they love everybody and I think they will do fine. Their bloodline ends here because I'm responsible and I got them both. And yeah, so the population pressures are making the dogs more difficult. Keeping the trickier dogs in homes are making the ones who come to us in some cases more difficult. And we need to see that as the symptom of success that it is.
Smorgasbord of issues, isn't there, in the dog world? Every time there's I don't know, I'm picking a little scab and I realize, oh my God, there's a mountain underneath that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't work specifically directly in the dog, in rescue or in training on behavior or any of that. I'm just a regular dog guardian and I'm like, oh, let me see what's under there. It's like, and rescue is one of those spaces that I cannot wrap my head around. It is so complex, but within that complexity, there's also, because it's an industry very much dependent on donations, people are also not, I wouldn't say scared, but very hesitant about what they share because it's that symbiotic relationship where it's like, oh, there's a way to say things, there's a way to communicate things because you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you and create a lot of chaos around something that is so necessary, but also so complex.
Yeah, there's so much pressure. Like if you hit 90% and you're officially no kill, you only euthanize 10% of the animals that come in. Next year, let's do 95%. Next year, let's do 98%. If you're at 98, why not just save them all? And the pressure from the public who do not understand these complex issues to get a higher and higher and higher save rate is making shelters warehouse dangerous dogs. And the longer you warehouse them, the harder it gets to make a decision because no dog is dangerous 100% of the time. They all have their lovely side to them. Like Chinook was one of the best trained dogs I've ever had. He was very affectionate and wiggly and lovely. He'd wake up in the morning and be like, oh, you're not the dog who tried to murder me last night. He'd be all wiggly happy. Like they all have that side. And the longer we hold on to them, the harder it gets to make a decision. And then you've got volunteers. He's a volunteer favorite. Like I'm not taking him home, but somebody should take him home. Then the volunteers go out and get everybody in the press together. Like this shelter says they're no kill and they want to euthanize Fluffy. And he just needs a home with no dogs and no cats and no kids and no UPS and a really high fence and somebody who doesn't go on vacation or have guests over and likes wearing chainmail around the house. Like that's all he needs. Like he'd be perfect. And that's not a home that exists.
If you could have your career all over again, go back in time, would you choose the same career? Would you do it all again?
Yeah, I don't ever have the career I have without taking the circuitous route. There's part of me that's like, well, if I knew animal behavior was a thing when I went to art school, so there was no Google back then, if I had started in animal behavior, like how much better would I be at my job? But also, having done the starving artist thing, having worked in doggy daycares, having had lots of crap jobs on my way here, I think instead of just going right straight through, get a PhD, get a great job, I don't think I'd be as good at what I'm doing. I think all of the experiences that went along the way, like there's a certain amount of like, can I go back and tell 15-year-old Trish, like, concentrate on this stuff? Yeah, probably I could have gotten the PhD if I had started earlier. Maybe I would have done some brilliant research that would be helping, but I wouldn't be who I am. I would not be doing what I'm doing. So I think anybody you ask that question is like, oh, yeah, but I think the route that I've taken has led me to where I am, and I'm happy with where I am. I don't run from controversy. I'm good at deleting and blocking, and if it wasn't me doing this, somebody else would be getting the slings and arrows, and I can handle it. I think working in sheltering has made me very tough in a way that I wasn't when I first started, and I am able to sort of put things in little books on the back shelf and go through. Like, I have seen things that I can't unsee in my years with the ASPCA, and I will not trouble you with any of those images, but somebody's got to do it. And I think I am psychologically tough enough to get through it and concentrate on the animals and think about that butt walking out the shelter door one day into a family home. And that's really the image that keeps me doing this stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Trish. I really appreciate your time with me.
I'm going to go answer the Doberman alarm. Thanks for
Go for
inviting
it.
me.
Bye-bye.